Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So, for those of you who have been around for some time, you might be aware that I really enjoy making fan-made elite specializations and doing my own fan reworks of certain classes, trait lines, all that stuff. And with the recent End of Dragons beta preview, we had the Harbinger. Now, Harbinger numerically is very strong. However, I felt that it was my least favorite in terms of themes, and I felt that it could have been expanded upon, and I'm taking the liberty to make my own recreation. Now, this is purely from my own brain. I'm not saying that this should be implemented because I don't have the wide scope of knowledge that many other players do, or especially the developers themselves, but this is more so just for fun and just some ideas that you never know could be something. So I'm going to start with the Harbinger Shroud. So, Tainted Bolts fire a quick bolt, or quick bolts of dark energy that pierce. Critical strikes apply weakness. Dark Barrage fires 6 bolts of vile energy that fan out from you, piercing all enemies in their path. And Devouring Cut channel twisted energy to launch yourself at your foe, tormenting nearby enemies. So in this case, it's a little bit more weakness and a little bit more poison, not necessarily so much front loading on the torment damage. And additionally, the Devouring Cut, it only does 1 torment right now, but 2 torment could be okay. Next, let's go into my rework for the pistol. Vicious Shot. For this, I changed the torment to vulnerability on the bounces. This is slightly different from Axe because it's now AoE application of vulnerability. Pistol 2, Weeping Shots. Pierce your enemies with a series of corrosive bullets, inflicting poison and vulnerability. The change here being that Torment is no longer on the second one, but instead is now poison. And now for the Pistol 3, this has been changed a bit more drastically and a little bit more interestingly. Vile Blast. Charge a dart that shatters on impact, poisoning and weakening enemies. Gain life force for each foe struck. So now it's still the damage and weakness, but there's no actual stun on it. This would end up becoming a flip over skill if you successfully land this Pistol 3. Upon successful hit of Vile Blast, you gain access to Petrified Surprise. Quickly shoot towards the ground, summoning a spell at the target's feet, stunning and slowing them. Gain more life force as well. This is a bit of a faster, but it's that additional reward for landing that Pistol 3. I think right now the pistol feels kind of like a mimic to NG's pistol, and I think having a flip over skill with a little bit something extra, a decent packet of damage on another stun with a slow and additional life force generation, it could be interesting. But there are many other ideas that people can go with. Next, I'm going to start with the traits, but I'm going to leave one trait for the very end because it segues into a much grander idea I have about the Harbinger. So, first and foremost, Septic Corruption. Deal increased condition damage for each stack of blight you have. Poison you inflict lasts longer. This removes a little bit of that condition power because the F2 now already applies poison. This trait used to and currently does allow your F2 to apply that poison on top of the torment. This, however, is just specializing a bit more into that poison playstyle. Similarly, the trait Wicked Corruption has been tweaked to increase the weakness duration. Right now, all it does is deal increased damage for each stack of blight you have, and there's no addition to that, which means Septic Corruption oftentimes is seen as the stronger trait. At least in the beta, it was. This would allow your weakness to last a little bit longer, 20% increased duration. Next, Implacable Foe. Gain stability when entering Harbinger Shroud, and your first strike is guaranteed to critically hit. You gain ferocity based on your vitality. The only change here is that you now get a guaranteed first crit strike on entering Shroud. Next, we have Twisted Medicine. This currently allows your Elixir's boons to be applied to allies around you in a radius of 240. This will be changed in my rendition of the Harbinger, where you can now throw Elixirs at a range to grant their boons to nearby allies. You gain concentration based on your vitality. Now, peep the little subtext. Does not affect Harbinger Shroud Elixirs. Didn't actually think about this, but that might be a little bit of a spoiler of what will be at the end of the video. But this just allows you to be a little bit more interactive with those Elixirs and place them at a larger range, just in case you are playing a bit more of a support concentration role. and you don't want to get up close and just get bursted down super quickly. Next, let's go into the Grandmasters. So first and foremost, we have Cascading Doom, which is a name change from, I believe, Cascading Corruption. Corruption often indicates condition damage or conditions of sorts, but this is a power-oriented one, so I thought I would switch these two Grandmaster names around. So Cascading Doom, your power is increased. Leaving Harbinger Shroud at a certain threshold of blight unleashes a column of alchemical magics. The column detonates after a short duration. So currently the three Grandmasters are very passive. It's just a passive pulse of an effect around the Harbinger. When reworking and reimagining these Grandmasters, I wanted them to be a bit more active and incorporate blight, because blight is the new and fun effect on Harbinger show. So this is really going to be focusing on that blight. So with this trait, instead of just pulsing a passive damage around you, you have to meet 10 blight threshold or above to activate this column ability. Now this column is known as Cascading Doom. After a delay, the column collapses and sends a wave in an area, dealing damage and weakening foes. Foes in the immediate area of the column detonation are feared and tainted with vulnerability as well. There's no fear application on Harbinger, so I thought bringing it to a Grandmaster trait would at least be interesting enough. So right now it's a 300 radius damage and weakness, but if, say, the enemies were standing right in the column after 3 seconds, they would also apply that fear. Now this is on a 14-second cooldown, so even if you get back into Harbinger Shroud instantly, because it's on a 10-second cooldown, you still have to wait an extra 4 seconds so you can continue to get that blight. I didn't want to just make this like a spam 10-10 just to spam these Cascading Doom abilities. So next up we have Deathly Haste. This has a trait that is already in Harbinger Shroud, but it's your passive trait. And I think it's too strong as a passive. So I put it in the Grandmaster. Gain vitality at the cost of blight lasting longer on you. So now you have plus 350 vitality, but instead of blight lasting 25 seconds, it now lasts 30 seconds, maybe even 35 seconds. Now, the rest of this is the same. While in Harbinger Shroud, gain an aura that pulses each interval to grant quickness to yourself and nearby allies. I've increased the radius by 300 because I think 240 is a little too small, and especially in PvE, you know, people might be spread out a little bit more. Even in PvP and World versus World, you know, this just adds a little bit of boost to that trait. And then finally, Corruption approaches. Your condition damage is increased. While in Harbinger Shroud, you gain an aura that pulses each interval to torment and poison nearby enemies. Staying in Harbinger Shroud after a duration pulses a stronger amount of poison. Now for this, I could have thought of a more interesting activation mechanic, but I think the pulse duration is already good for condition damage, and it's that slower, encroaching condition playstyle that can really feed away and tear down a target over time. So your condition damage is still the same, but if you stay in Harbinger Shroud for 12 seconds, I don't know if that's actually possible, I might actually have to double check, but it would require you to get some extra life force and focus on generating that life force. But staying in Harbinger Shroud for 12 seconds will allow poison to hit 5 stacks of poison for its 12-second interval. And then 12 seconds after that, if you happen to stay in that long, you'll get another 3 additional poison stacks. But this is really functioning in the same way, but instead of that weakness, it's now that poison. So this adds a little bit extra condition damage to this build. I don't want the condition playstyle to go away entirely. I just would like to see it focused around poison and like the secondary damaging condition being torment. So those are all of the Grandmaster traits, focusing a little bit more on that blight, at least for Cascading Doom and Deathly Haste, while Corruption approaches forces you to play into that long standing Harbinger Shroud. You'll get a pulse every 4th pulse will add additional poison or an additional condition. Now, those are all of the basic ideas in terms of slight tweaks, condition modifications, a couple more interesting, more in-depth changes on the Grandmasters, but now we're really going to get to the one thing that makes this Harbinger spec special. Now we have Elixirs. And currently those elixirs have been said to be a little bit bland when you're looking to the engineer who can throw them, who can augment them a whole bunch. They have different effects even on the elixirs that they're given. In the case of the Harbinger, it really is just apply boons to yourself, and if traded, apply those boons to allies. You might remember that the Deathly Haste trait gave you that vitality that is currently on Alchemical Vigor. I have remade that trait to Alchemic Master. Elixir skills can be used in Harbinger Shroud with different effects. Using elixirs while in Shroud apply more blight. Now this is one of the second minor traits. This really could be baked into that very first minor trait. But I felt like this was special enough to be its own trait. You know, it's a little powerful, it's a little interesting. So we have Alchemical Master. This will now allow you in this fantasy rework to use those elixirs while in Harbinger Shroud. Now this is directly different from current Death Shrouds because you don't have any access to utility skills. But in the case of the Harbinger, if you are focusing in on those elixirs, you can now utilize them in Harbinger Shroud, but they're not the same. They have twisted effects in Harbinger Shroud, but they do share the same cooldown, of course, or they would increase the cooldown. Who knows? They're just balancing all that stuff. Thematically, I think this is actually very exciting and would have actually been really cool to see on the Harbinger. So, Elixir of Promise has been transformed into Elixir of Lying. Your elixir, it now is a heal. You gain health because you no longer have a second health bar. You'll be able to heal yourself while in Harbinger Shroud. You throw your elixir at a target and siphon their health for additional healing. This will just throw your elixir, and then if any enemies are hit in that 180 radius, you gain more healing. This is really your upkeep if you do struggle with that healing while in Harbinger Shroud. Next, we have Elixir of Hatred. This is the second version of that Might and Fury elixir. So this elixir is similar. You throw your elixir at your target, destroying boons and dealing more damage for each boon destroyed. It's decent damage and it's an AoE effect. It's additional damage and it will strike and punish one specific target. And that's the hatred idea. And next we have Elixir of Sloth. I believe this is Elixir of the one that gives you the quickness and swiftness. Yes. Throw an elixir at your target, applying immense slow and destroying endurance. This is PvP focused. In PvE, this would probably just like do some breakbar damage. So to mention, all of these elixirs, they give you more blight. Instead of 5 blight, it's now 10 if you use them while in Shroud. So next we have Elixir of Gluttony. This is really fun in terms of an idea, in terms of themes. I believe this is replacing Elixir of Bliss. So you smash an elixir on the ground, summoning a jade-pierced mummy, which we actually see on Vital Draw. This mummy will siphon health from nearby enemies, and if it is fully healed, it will resurrect and fight alongside you for a time. The damage is minor, but its healing will every tick give itself 5,000 or 1,000 healing, and if it heals a total of 5,000, it will be summoned out. Again, it will be resurrected to come fight for you for a duration of 10 seconds. I mean, we have those mummies skewered on jade obelisk things. We might as well use them, you know? And next we have Elixir of Futility. This is replacing that stun break elixir. You throw an elixir at your target, knocking them down, and then you'll summon claws to immobilize them after. So you get the knockdown, and then like half a second later, the claws will summon out and start immobing them. This is really like a lockdown elixir. It does a little bit of damage, but it's mostly for that knockdown and immob. And in a competitive setting, that could actually be pretty good. And then finally, for my idea of a Harbinger Shroud elixir, I had to go with the name. It's Condi Bomb. It would probably just be called like Condition Bomb, but you throw an elixir at your target, inflicting them with a plague of conditions. This is the elite. You give yourself even more blight. So this just applies a bunch of conditions: poison, torment, bleeding, vulnerability, weakness, slow, and cripple. I would even throw a blind on there, honestly. I think overall, if Harbinger functioned in this manner, where you could use those elixirs in Shroud and they have like a different effect, I think that'd be really cool, and it would kind of provide a more interesting playstyle with those elixirs. Do I want to save those elixirs out of Shroud where I can get boons and buffs for myself? Or do I want to go into Shroud and get those hard-hitting, debilitating effects, summon a minion, bomb them with conditions, destroy their boons, siphon even more health? There's so many things you can think of when we have this flip over of an elixir. But yeah, honestly, that is my total reimagining of the current Harbinger that we got in the betas. Thank you everyone so much for coming. I hope you guys enjoyed. I actually have the Virtuoso and Willbender also done, but they're not necessarily as grand of ideas as I had with the Harbinger, so they will be their own video. This one I needed to have it be its own video, but the Willbender and Virtuoso will be coming out later if you're interested in those. But thank you everyone. Once again, subscribe, like, comment if you have any comments around Harbinger, if you would think of any particular things that you'd want to see changed on the Elite Spec, if you want to comment on any of my ideas, call me crazy, call me redundant, call me spectacular, whatever you want to do. And yes, thank you everyone so much. I have official links down below where it can help me out greatly if you use them. Those links you can now pre-order End of Dragons, buy the expansions, and play the game for free. And if you use those down below, they greatly help out me and the channel. Also, thank you everyone so much for following me on Patreon and becoming patrons. You guys are absolutely wonderful. You guys are going to get some early access to videos, exclusive content soon, and special Discord stuff. So thank you everyone so much for coming once again, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye everyone!